Nice.
So, hello and welcome to the Mighty 90s Movie and TV podcast. I'm Simon, and tonight's guest, special guest, you may know him from Sister Sister, you may know him from Smart Guy, Lizzie Mcguire, City Guys, all of the things, many things to come. Was City Guys not on there?
City Guys is on there, yes.
Okay.
It's definitely on
nervous. I got nervous.
Yeah.
Arvie Lowe Jr. is here with us. Thank you so much and welcome to the podcast.
Appreciate it, man. I really appreciate being here. I don't do many of these, so it's fun to kind of talk with you about the 90s and stuff that was going on in the 90s. Fun time for me. I think it was probably one of the better decades, but that's just me, you know? So yeah.
It's gonna be both cool. Of us. Both of us. We all love the 90s. And you, I mean, so like I grew up loving, you know, all of those shows. Smart Guy in particular, it's like my heart. I love that show so much. And I mean, I heard recently that they're thinking of doing a reboot. Could Dion make an appearance? Would you be open to that if they brought it back?
I would, absolutely. If Taj was like, hey man, you want to strap on some, you want to drink some Alpha Boost 2000 and strap on another slicker maybe or whatever. So yeah, we'll have another Dog Burger Rebellion. So yeah, I mean, I'm down. I'm totally down for a reboot. You know, I'm trying to figure out where Dion would be. You know, like back in the day, his character was thrown together by really smart writers, but I was able to like take what was on the page and kind of make him kind of mold him. You know, really I'm doing I used to watch a lot of old blaxploitation movies, you know, back in the day. You know, The Mac being one of them, Superfly, Black Caesar. And so when I was presented with the Dion role, he was kind of flat. He was a villain, you know, on the first episode. He really was. Oh, I don't know if he would, in today's climate with regard to sexual harassment and all that stuff, like he would be frowned upon right now. That the writers would definitely have had to tone him down. But yeah, like the first time he had a goon with him and everything. Mm-hmm. You know, he rolled around because you know he was mouthy. So yeah, that was who Dion was back in the day. Really, who I'm doing is he's a young version of Max Julian, who played the Mac, and he had like he had a swagger about him. He was a hustler, and you know his voice tone was way up here, and he had a slick way of talking, and you know that Mac Daddy Dion's clocking everybody, you know. So and you know that was the first version of Dion, but then the second version was, hey, listen, everyone has kind of that guy in their school, and there's no shortage of hustlers or guys that were very entrepreneurial back then that figured out ways to make money outside of school, you know. So that's who Dion embodies, and you know, that character has stuck with me for quite some time. Yeah,
rightfully so, because I mean it's classic. And you were so great and are so great at being like theatrical with your body. Like your movements are very specific to you know, they're kind of like a signature of yours. I mean, is that something that is just like you as a person, or something that you know you go into when you're playing roles?
You know what? I think it's because of my dance background, and I was kind of a hyperactive kid, so I did a lot of activity. I played tennis, I played basketball, I played baseball, and I danced for like a long time. A lot of people don't really know, before I got the role of Boots in Newsies, I had been dancing for quite some time. Like I started dancing professionally when I was about 9, and then you know, it snowballed into these tours that I would go on for Reebok International. That was like about 11. And then maybe about 12, I went to the audition for Newsies. And that audition was a long process, you know, like that was about 6 months, you know, with regard, like the cattle call, which was the first audition, and then to the actual finished audition, whereas they had the 8 principal Newsies. So yeah, I find ways to incorporate body movements with a lot of my characters. I know that Ernie and Sister Sister was kind of another character that he was a dancer at one point, and he always was a very theatrical character too. So I figured out ways. The writers were really good about asking me like, okay, so what do you do on your spare time? And I was like, yeah, well, I dance, and back in the day, in the 90s, background dancing, I would leave the set. And I don't know if a lot of people know this or not, but, Marcus Houston was in Immature back then. And I used to be a background dancer for Immature. Oh. So we did Soul Train together. We did tours together. People thought me and him were like brothers or cousins, but, because we would always go together to the rehearsals and stuff. But it was because we were actively working. We would leave a tour and then go straight to the Sister Sister set, or leave the Sister Sister set and go straight to the rehearsals. So dance was like, and I would be a background dancer along with one of my homies or whatever, or a crew of people for Immature, and then switch roles and go straight into the Sister Sister thing. So wow. Yeah, we were pulling double shifts back in the 90s. Like there was no amount of not working. It was about paying them bills and getting that money back then.
What? So was Marcus Houston, did that play any part of you getting involved in Sister Sister, or did you meet him through that process?
I met him through that process. Before I actually met Marcus once on another pilot that I shot. But that was a Chris Stokes production. Chris Stokes was their manager back then. Mm-hmm. And so I met him once through that. But then I went out for the role of Roger, and he booked it and I didn't. So, and that's kind of been the case with all of the shows I've been on, truth be told, I have friendships with a lot of the principal actors on these shows. Wesley Jonathan, who I was on City Guys with, me and him did Thea. Jason Weaver of the Lion King fame. And Thea, Sister Sister, he's been on, Smart Guy, a lot of TV shows that he's been on. I was originally I went out on the roles for his, the part that he played, which was Taj's brother in Smart Guy. And it was between 3 other people, me and him. We went to network, and he ended up getting the role, So a lot of these shows, I'd be right there, right on the cusp. But they're really good about recognizing, okay, who could we pair Arvie with that makes great comedy? So, I haven't been forgotten, and I've been grateful for all the opportunities that I've had thus far, So yeah, even though I don't get those roles, I ended up coming on and, being a character in those shows in some shape or form or capacity, and so it's been fun during that time because I get to work with people that I love,
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's great that they're recognizing talent and wanting to include it, in some form or another. And then you're being able to take those opportunities and do so much with it. I mean, to the point that, we're talking, 25 years later or whatever it is, and it's still having an impact and still being streamed, all over the world. I mean,
I'm surprised. Yeah. I mean, Smart Guy, there was a kid that lives up the street from me, and he was like, hey, you play Dion on Smart Guy. I said, dude, you weren't even born when the show came. You know what I'm saying? You're like, what, 7, 8 years old? He's like, yeah, but I mean, I remember your character, from then, and you were really good. And I said, well, okay, that's cool. But it's as I understand it, it's one of the number one streamed shows on Disney Plus, if I'm not mistaken. So, and that's across the board. That's like from age, that's a big demographic, like age 40 to like age 10, the kids are watching Smart Guy, so it's fun. It's fun to be exposed to like 2 different or 3 different generations of kids.
Yeah. I mean, a couple things from within all of that. I mean, Marcus Houston played a great Roger, but I could see you as being a great Roger as well. You would have been great in that role. And then with regards to Smart Guy, Sister Sister, those becoming such, international successes, like, was there a point that you it kind of hit you that, wow, like people, I'm talking to you from, just outside of London in the UK right now. And, there's people all over the world that have enjoyed this. I mean, was there a moment where that kind of sank in for you?
Let's see. Yes. Maybe about 10 years ago, it started to sink in when the reruns started to, when people from other countries would approach me and go, wow, we get smart guy out here. Social media has allowed everyone to just touch their favorite, they can send them a personal message, whoever they feel like they want to talk to, they could talk to those people, and I 9 times out of 10 will respond because I'm not doing much, but yeah, it really, when MySpace was out, and I don't know if, people, I might be dating myself, but, MySpace was a big thing. And I had a MySpace page and people would go, wow, I'm a real big fan of Sister Sister. And I'm like, oh, you get it out there in New Brunswick and, and all these, foreign places. It's cool. In Britain, it's pretty big too, as well. So, and also streaming, because even networks are, the show's been in syndication forever, but internationally, I'm really surprised by the response it's been getting.
Well, and it's a really, really positive show. I mean, almost potentially like ahead of its time a little bit in terms of it being like, I think it was either Jason Weaver or Taj had posted something about it, but basically saying about how you had such a positive look on a black family, on a pretty much, all black cast with a single dad who is a great role model and, was providing for his family. And it was just like such a positive, great look, a gifted child, that was in school and gifted musically. You had Marcus and Mo with their band and everything. It's like
yeah
it's just a great all-round show. I don't know how anyone could ever have watched it as a kid or now and have anything negative to say about it. And you were a big part of that.
I'm glad. I was just glad to be working at that point. I mean, we were high school kids, we were adults playing high school kids, but we still were very, youthful in our appearance. So it was more about, I think the show made a conscious decision to be wholesome, to be fun, to tackle a couple of deep things, and also, putting this family, that was a blended family, I believe. Some of the characters, they didn't broach that too much, but a lot of people will be, oh wait, Jason Weaver doesn't really look like the father, the sister, the father, and Taj look alike. Jason, so that was a thing. When people go back and look at the older episodes, they go, okay, now there's a discussion about it, but back then it wasn't a big deal. This is a dad taking care of his family, setting positive role models. Also, the son's getting in trouble and he's handling the son, the daughter, and this genius kid at the same time. It's flawlessly, all kinds of, back in the 90s, we needed those imagery, that imagery, and that was important back in the day, so it spawned, for the content creators and the writers and the producers and directors of today. They remember those shows, so we needed those to springboard into the new generation of shows that you see today, so yeah, it was, I felt that we were breaking ground. And from Sister Sister to Smart Guy, those two tent poles were things that, T and Tamara's legacy and Taj's legacy will live on forever.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Yeah. I mean, to take it even further back, I just had Scott Cordell on the podcast, who was he was one of the Newsy dancers, as well. I mean, what was that experience like for you, being in Newsies in Disney, and it being, it's still today, a big film. I mean, Scott was saying it was actually considered like a flop at the beginning, but it's gone on to have like sort of cult status. I mean, yeah, what was that experience like?
Yeah, it was definitely panned. I remember getting these, back in the day, Disney would send us courier packs. They were like this thick, of press clippings, reviews from Variety. They would copy them and they would give them to us. And I would read and I would be happy to get them because I would be like, oh, okay, great. Someone's gonna, let's read reviews on the movie. And then by the middle of the paragraph, it's terrible. It's 2 hours of this. It's god awful and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, the movie musical genre is dead. And dude, I was like, okay, did anyone like the movie? Yeah, it was critically panned, yes. However, it was this, the story stuck with people. The Joseph Pulitzer and these big high-powered figures back then taking advantage of these kids, really resonated with a whole generation of, children that actually didn't know that story. And so now they were watching this, obviously, when Disney takes something, they do what they do with it, right? So I was proud to be part of that, of the telling of that story, because it's such a underdog story, and who hasn't experienced that in their life, I'm way down here and we know the boss is taking advantage of my time. They're asking me to do things that I can't do. And then all of a sudden they're going to figure out a way to fatten their pockets on my back. Not happy. So let's stick it to them. And there's also strength in numbers. It showed the power of unions. It showed the power of the power of the people sticking together for what's right, and to the right to really earn a living and earn a fair wage. So yeah, it was critically panned. But as the years went by, I started getting these emails about, oh man, you were in Newsies. That was one of my favorite things. And then people would, high school productions would do their own version of Newsies, and they would post it up on like YouTube. And then I would get emails saying, hey, do you have any old songs or whatever from Newsies? Because we're huge fans. And I would go, I thought that movie was terrible. But people go, no, that movie was awesome. So it really started snowballing into this, people would reach out to each other once again through social media. People would connect with each other about Newsies, and all of a sudden you'd see these scores of Newsies fans go, yeah, we get together and watch Newsies. We've made our own Newsies names. We're fansies. Matter of fact, that's one of my friends today. Abby is the catalyst for the play to get done. It showed the power. Actually, the funny thing is, in retrospect, the essence of Newsies and now the popularity of the Broadway play is exactly what the movie was about. So people got together and forced Disney to come up to tell a live stage Broadway version of that. And they responded. And then the people responded, by supporting it in Broadway, and then having a nationwide tour, and then putting it, and then filming that tour, and then putting it on, Disney Plus and to stream. That is all the people talking. That is taking Disney to task and saying, that property, we love that thing you did with Newsies. We want that, so we want you to tell that story, and we want you to tell it again. And so, yes, that in essence, that's what happened. And actually the Newsies streetcar show at Disney, at California Adventure, got done because the people once again wanted to see something at the theme parks, with regard to Disney and Newsies. So yeah, like that's the power of the people working again through the Newsies brand and that movie. So yeah, I'm really surprised. It's really been the people driving that property, So I'm impressed. I'm more impressed by them than when the movie came out, because they want more, and Disney's giving it to them.
Well, that's great, and that's worth way more than what critics think, right? Is you've got fan love.
Oh yeah. We didn't have Rotten Tomatoes back then. Yeah. We would have probably gotten a better outlook. But yeah, no Rotten Tomatoes back then. But we have people that really clamor on to that Disney brand and that way that Disney tells stories. And kudos to Kenny Ortega, who was the director, because he's continued to flourish with Hocus Pocus and the High School Musical brand and Descendants. And, he continues to push the movie musical genre in so many dope directions. It's insane. If I didn't have bad knees, I'd be right there trying to dance with him.
Well, so how did the dancing go? So even before Newsies, is that what you were doing before acting? Did it go dancing and then into acting?
Yes, indeed. I would go to dance classes every Saturday. It was a way to keep me off the streets of LA, so that obviously back in the early 90s, we're going 90s again, in LA, the gangbang population was thick. And I live on a street that literally cuts right straight through two sides. There's a Crip side and there's a Blood side. So it was like, depending on which way you was going, you had to figure out what you was going to wear that day.
Oh, wow.
Do not get hit up or what have you. So in order for my mother and my father to keep me out of trouble, boy, you dance, okay, cool, we're gonna put you in dance classes every Saturday. That kept me off the street, disciplined, and right with the world. So I would leave, and honestly, it turned me into it. What dance does and sports do for most kids in LA is it gives them structure, so that's what it gave me. It turned me from dancing on the street corner in front of Danny's liquor store into like a professional dancer, so I was pretty grateful to my mom and my pops for supporting that, because neither of them have any background in any of that. My mother was a teacher and my dad worked for Lockheed Aircraft. So he was an engineer. My mother was a teacher. So they're like, we know nothing about this. We just know you're good at it. So they continue to push. Yeah.
That's really cool. And I fully agree. I think, sport and structure, all of these things just give away the channel energy and in a, positive way, and social skills and all of those other things. So I mean, who were some of your like dancing like influences? Like were you like a Michael Jackson fan? That's
absolutely yeah. I think funny about Michael Jackson. I think I scored a VHS copy of Captain EO. And once again, we back to the 90s, VCRs, and you would have blank tapes and you would have, literally my schooling of, my acting school was just copying shows like The Cosby Show, like A Different World, like Hanging with Mr. Cooper, like grabbing videos off of MTV and then studying them, like just putting them in the VHS player and just rewinding them. And then I would sit in front of the TV and just mimic the moves and figure out how to do that. That was way before I even got to dance class, So yeah, dance was always a thing where you see Michael Jackson, you see Prince, you see Cameo, you see Kiss, you see these bands, doing what they do best. And then you want to mimic that. You're like, wow, that is so dope that every time Michael Jackson steps on a curb, it lights up. What the heck is that about? So yeah, I was one of those kids that was fascinated by those things. And I wanted to learn as much as I possibly could on my own, first, before I got to someone giving me instruction with regard to dance. And I also had we also had in the 90s, a lot of celebration of what happened previous. So there was Motown that, they had a Motown 25 show that Michael Jackson moonwalked on for the first time that we all saw. You remember? People would have to remember that, but that was a 90s thing. I think that happened in the early 80s or the 90s. And what they did was they ran through all of the old Motown, like, Sammy Davis Jr. and Tina Turner and you know, Sam Cooke and Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder. And I had a tape of Motown 25. And I would watch that religiously, so much so that I would probably remember some of the stuff, you know, by memory. And so, yeah, I studied that. I studied all those older artists. Gregory Hines was one of my favorite dancers. He was in Tap, and, you know, God rest his soul. He passed away not too long ago. Michael Jackson was also one of my favorite dancers. Prince was also one of my favorite dancers, not just because he could do the splits and jump in 6-inch heels, but because he was a renowned musician, played every single instrument. Sammy Davis Jr., once again, one of my favorite dancers. Sam Ann Sims. Harold Nicholas was also one of my favorite tap dancers. You know, I started in tap, and then tap kind of merged into hip hop being more popular back in the early 90s, you know. So yeah, those are some of the core favorite dancers. And then when you know, in maybe 92, maybe 93-ish, you know, you start learning who were the more popular hip hop dancers back then, because I was going to a studio in Los Angeles that was the premier place for hip hop dance. You know, everyone who is anyone, BBD, Belle Biv DeVoe, they rehearsed at that studio that I was going to. So I was like, I'm here, you know, I'm in the place to be, you know. So those hip hop dancers that were coming through there, I learned a lot from them. There was Swoop, there was Moody, there was Fatima that was there, and Fatima choreographed a lot of the Aaliyah catalog. She worked with all of the artists from Timbaland's camp in the early 90s. So I was in the epicenter of dance and choreography for that whole string of 90s hits that everyone remembers. So yeah, I mean, I had some great teachers back in the day.
That's all so awesome. I'm kind of forgetting that I meant to ask you questions. I'm just like, as if I'm watching something on YouTube or something that I'm really enjoying. Okay,
Cool.
so you sort of, you're into the acting at the same time. I mean, did you have a preference? If you could have only chosen one, like, would it have been dance or would it have been acting?
I think it probably would have been dance. You know, I think I made my bones in the choreography and the dance world, so much so because I was also teaching as well. You know, you get to be a dancer for so long at this particular studio that you become a teacher. You know, if you can, you know, you have your own hip hop class. Okay, great. I'm with it. You know, so I was into teaching as well, and also I get that from my mother. You know, because she was a social studies teacher. It just kind of naturally gravitated towards teaching. And you know, during my darker times, I don't want to say darker, but during the times where I was not working much, you know, the Taj's mother would call me and say, "Hey, listen, can you teach Taj a couple of 8 counts? You know, before the show, you know, we got him dancing on some things." And she would actually hire me to go while we're not filming The Smart Guy to go teach Taj a couple of moves here and there. So I thought that was cool, you know. Yeah, that was her looking out as well, and that goes back to the thing where I think they've cemented their legacy within Hollywood as, you know, people that uplift certain actors that they see worked hard and were really talented.
That's really cool. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Well, I mean, so to speak on that, I guess. So you were in Sister Sister first, and so you just kind of instantly connected with, you know, Tia and Tamara and their whole family in real life. Was that just kind of, you just, you know, gelled?
I did, yeah. I knew Tia and Tamara from hip hop class. That, once again, I was at the school where all the hip hop was at. So I had met them at class, you know, on Saturdays. You know, it was the place to be. The place would be packed on Saturdays. So I saw Tia and Tamara. They would be taking classes there at Regina School of Performing Arts, and I would be like, "Hey, girls, how you doing?" Blah blah blah. You know, every now and again we would talk, but we didn't garner a relationship until, you know, I read that they were going to get a show, and I was to audition for Roger. So I didn't even meet them until I started actually working on the show. You know, Marcus had already gotten the part, and then I started to my agent started to put me on auditions for, you know, a character. They didn't know which character it was, but I started going on a couple of different characters there. So I landed on Ernie, and I got the first one, which was just really kind of a DJ situation where I think that episode was Tia and Tamara where it was going to take the car, and it was Halloween. I think it might have been a Halloween episode. Nope, I'm lying too. There was an episode of Sister Sister where Tia and Tamara were going to have a house party, you know, and I was going to be their DJ. So that was my first, you know, that was my first role that I had won with them. And then they started to slowly build Ernie into a character there that was going to be Roger's friend, you know. So that's what it ended up being.
Nice. That's awesome. And I mean, how would you compare your experiences from Sister Sister to Smart Guy?
Oh, they were both really great. Yeah. I remember you know, the let's see if there anything that stands out. I couldn't say really because I was just trying to work back then. Like if you're a, you know, kid actor, you know, you're just there to really do a job and go and not ruffle anyone's feathers, or just do a job because your agent said, hey, look, this is where you got to be, you know. But we were also doing 3 hours of school a day too, you know. So it was about, time is always of the essence, you know. So you go to school 3 hours, and then you maybe take a week to just bank hours so that we could use them, and then the kids can work, you know, longer hours. So we were doing that for you know, that would happen for weeks on end. Oh, we've got 4 episodes to shoot. It's 1 episode every week that we shoot, you know. So we were like, okay, let's just knock a lot of these school hours out so that we can just completely, you know, finish our episodes, and then, you know, everyone's happy. So yeah, that was fun times. Those were fun. I don't know if there was any type of, you know, significant transition. I just would say that the writers were doing their due diligence with regard to character building and giving Tia and Tamara and Taj some palatable characters that they could really interact with, and have really dope storylines with as well. You know, it needs to be entertaining as well too, you know. So but I think that there was a conscious decision to keep bringing characters on that were multidimensional, you know. We have, you know, Ernie was a theater major, you know, Dion hustler. So those two things, they always know that I can bring kind of an animated, you know, I could bring the character to life. And depending on whatever I'm, you know, whatever is happening with the character in the situation. So, you know, when we did those things, it as far as rounding out the cast, it was a fun time, and everyone was having a good time during that time, you know. So we could improvise a little bit. We could go outside the realm of our comfort zones with some characters, and then we could also touch on a couple of things, which is what I did with Dion's character when we first started. But then we start to go into a place where we can have Dion be there and be a school friend to Marcus and Mo, and they could have their threesome there, you know, their gruesome threesome. And, you know, they could definitely, you know, cause trouble in that regard. Or Dion brings some type of trouble to these straight guys, you know, because, hey, it's like, Dion is going to get you in trouble some kind of way. But they've got to figure out a way to be like, wait a minute, no, you trying to hustle us? Are you trying to hustle us? Or are you trying to, because everyone low key really doesn't want to do the work. You know, back then they were like, we don't want to do like hard work. I know Mo doesn't. Mo is like, where's the money? Hold on, how do you get that? Okay, I gotta wait for you to get that, and you don't have to even work that hard. Just do it this way, you know. And what kid isn't gonna do that?
For sure. I mean, my favorite element of Smart Guy was the Marcus and Mo sort of connection, and you got to be part of that, almost pretty much more than anyone, I guess. So, and like, creating that group, that threesome, like you were saying, I mean, did you have like instantly, did you have great chemistry with Omar Goodin and Jason Weaver? Was that just like instant, or how did that come to be?
We had great chemistry before we even started doing the show. Me and Jason Weaver did a show called Thea a long time ago before Smart Guy. And I was a character named Otis on that show, as well as with, let's see, so it was Brandy Norwood was on the show, Thea Vidal, Jason Weaver, and I was just there, and also who played along with me was Wesley Jonathan. So Wesley from City Guys, and he's gone on to do so many big things. It's ridiculous, So yeah, we all have worked together previously. And then when we got to Smart Guy, it was like, okay, now we know what to do, So we know where to get our laughs here and there, We're just grateful for the writers to allow us to try to, take the script, which is a clay, and then form it into something funny, Oh yeah, let's add that. Let's add this. Okay, cool. Here's the lingo we want you to use during that. And then the rewrites would come in and it'd be like, okay, cool. Now we've got something we can work with,
Awesome. And so once Smart Guy finishes, actually, sorry, one last question on that is, did you guys film in front of a live audience on Sister Sister and Smart Guy?
Yes, we did. Both shows.
What was that like?
That was great. Yeah, because we didn't do many retakes. we rehearsed pretty well during the week. So when the show would the network would come back with rewrites and they would say, no, you can't say this, you can't say that. That's about Thursday, So we're still tinkering by Thursday, but then our network run-throughs were smooth and ready to roll. And yeah, like when the audience would hit, we would know where our laughs are coming from. We would know, we would be a well-oiled machine by that time. And that was great because, we get to talk to the fans, interact with them as well. Curtain call time would come and we would say what's up to them afterward and meet and go in the audience and say hi and get feedback. Yeah, it was fun performing in front of a live studio audience back then. Yeah.
That's so cool. I always wished that I could like be part of that, but never gonna happen being here. But so
it might happen. It might happen.
Yeah. If they do the reboot, you have to convince them to film it in the UK for some odd reason. Like, why not?
With it. I'm with all of that. Unfortunately, the powers that be, I don't know that they're working on it. So that's all I gotta say. Nothing's ever etched in stone in Hollywood. It might be a surprise, and initially it should kind of be that way because when it comes out, it's a surprise. So because if you know everything before the show hits, then it's not a surprise anymore. I was pretty disappointed. Well, I don't know, disappointed, but I was like, I was kind of looking forward to the Lizzie Mcguire reboot as well. I was kind of looking forward to that one because if Mr. Diggs was going to come back, in what capacity? I was curious to see in what capacity he would come back. In some shape or form, because that was a great role as well. Like I think I've taken roles throughout my career, or I've formed characters that try to be different from the other one. Although I would give it the same energy. A teacher versus Dion versus Ernie versus Otis, versus JJ Mayfield from Jessie, which was the last Disney Channel show that I did. All those people are different people, so I've always wanted to be a character actor, for the better part of, I always loved watching Jeffrey Wright is one of my favorite, actors out there. Robert Downey Jr. also, one of my favorite. Everyone loves Denzel. that's a given, Will Smith, yeah, cool. Martin Lawrence, excellent, character actors, though, for African Americans, Sean and Marlon Wayans does that really well. They know how to go from that spectrum to that spectrum. But Jeffrey Wright, for me, something about what Jeffrey Wright does with regard to character and transforming into his own character. Don Cheadle does that really well too. Like I've just gravitated onto as an actor. So yeah, that's the deal.
Well, with Lizzie McGuire, I mean, how did that come about? It sounds like, is it once you're in like the Disney machine, so to speak, you're on their radar for when roles come up? Did it sort of just connect through that, or is it like a whole fresh audition process?
That actually might be the way they do it, but I have no idea. So, I mean, in my mind, yes, that is the way that Disney operates. Like, okay, Arvie has done Newsies. We will keep him on the board. We have another show. We know he plays a great character. We'll keep him on the board for Lizzie McGuire. 15 years later after he did Newsies, you know what I'm saying? So in my mind, I would love for it to have gone down that way. Who knows? Maybe that's the way they do it. But in my estimation, I've always been blessed to have great agents, that would always go, Arvie's right for this character. Let's put a tape together of all the things that he's done, and let's get him in an audition. Lizzie McGuire, is that the one we're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Lizzie McGuire, that was a role that I scored through the writers of Smart Guy, because they were working on that show. And so I think it was going to be maybe a one-off of Lizzie McGuire's zany substitute teacher, Mr. Diggs. And so I was like, okay, cool. Stan Rogal saw a tape of mine with sister and Thea and Lizzie McGuire. I mean, not Lizzie McGuire, but Thea and all the shows that I had been on. And he said, yeah, we'll bring him in for an audition. Next thing you know, I was kind of working at that point. So I was just trying to figure out who Mr. Diggs was. Mr. Diggs is a young substitute teacher that has unconventional ways of teaching his class, but seeing as how he's a substitute, kids are like, what is he on? Like, is he gonna just do the lesson plan? No, I'm not gonna just teach the lesson plan. I'm gonna devise a project for you guys to do, because I want you to get the full scope of what I'm trying to teach you. So yes, that whole thing about being in the Disney bubble, that is a thing, but I think it's very calculated. So it's with the actor's representative and also the projects that are being presented at the time, if that answers the question.
Yeah.
Because to be real about it, I was doing temporary work. I was doing a temp job. I was about as broke as I could possibly be during that time. And so I worked at I worked at a stock brokerage called Gruntle and Company, answering the phones at the front desk. This is what I was doing. And then when Lizzie McGuire episodes would come on, I was also in a band during that time called Poppy Seeds. And we were a rock band. So I was temping in the daytime, in the morning. And then I was rehearsing for my band at night. And then during the middle of the day, I was shooting Lizzie McGuire. So it was like 3 things that were the temp poles for me. I was tired because I would have to be at work for the opening bell at like 4:30 in the morning or 5 a.m.
Wow.
So yeah, I was sleeping in the daytime, but I had that much energy to do that, so I was like rehearsing, going to show. There was an episode of Lizzie McGuire where I had to go back and overdub my my lines because I lost my voice the night before doing a show, doing a Poppy Seed show. So like I was working at that time, so Lizzie McGuire was a gig, for me. And it was like, this is a dope show. I didn't even realize then during that time how impactful, how much people loved the show. I just knew it was a great little, this is a great little show, about family structure, and there's some wholesomeness to it. It was dope. I liked the writing, and it was kind of like Ally McBeal but for kids. So I was like, cool. I'm down. What can I do? And then they kept giving, Mr. Diggs' character kept getting more and more play on the show, and he was tasked with trying to giving these kids these life lessons, but in unconventional ways. So I think that's what Mr. Diggs offered Lizzie Mcguire, and during that time.
It's another massive show, like another like international huge show. It's crazy.
Is it huge out there? Is it big out there? Yeah.
All the Disney stuff's massive, but we have Disney Channel here as well. So when we were, I grew up I was born in the late 80s, so grew up in the 90s, and our main channels here for that sort of stuff, we had Nickelodeon and Disney Channel. So we had,
wow.
Yeah, it was all, and I'm sure that's the same for the rest of Europe as well.
Yeah. Wow. So you guys have been tagging along.
Isn't that how it always goes? England are just tagging along in America's shadow, basically.
Not at all. But I mean, as far as hey, I never knew that the audience was international. As that's insane to me. Yeah,
I'm sure people would recognize you here. If you was walking in London, people would know. People would be like people that loved smart guy, the people in my age bracket, in their early 30s, mid 30s, that sort of, and then depending on, spanning Sister Lizzie Mcguire, that spans that even further. But I mean, you go on to do, like, I was watching your show reel, which is awesome. It's on YouTube, and you do like some darker stuff as well. It's like from a movie called Shot.
Yes. Yeah. That was a dark one.
I mean, what was that experience like? That's the most un-Disney stuff, right?
Oh yeah. Well, there comes a time where, you've done enough Disney that you're like, let me explore the darker side of what I could do with a character. And I don't know if it's maybe my energy or maybe my demeanor that gives off this thing with casting agents and managers that go, let's give Arvie the villain role. Let's deem, he's the fun villain. He's the fun guy that has no good intentions. He's the mischievous guy. That they always do that to me. So I said, okay, let me explore that. That project came to me through my agent once again. Roger Roth was producing, and Boo is the character that I played, in that movie, Shot. And so that came off the heels of Lizzie Mcguire. Lizzie Mcguire I had just finished it not too long ago. And, there was an opportunity for me to do some drama. So I said, okay, I'm going to flex my dramatic muscle here. Let me see how far I can push myself into character acting. Once again, I wanted to be a really good character actor. So I'm trying to see if I could leave Mr. Diggs in the dirt and see if I could become someone totally different, which it worked, But for me, I've grown up with those characters, with those people in Los Angeles my whole life. It wasn't a stretch for me to know a Boo, or a the gentleman just all those people, like all those stereotypes that I played in, in that movie. Those were basically all those stereotypes, the people that I always grew up with, or the people that I would always see around the neighborhood. So that's easy to do, for me. The story was good, and it gave me a chance to explore that area. But truth be told, when I saw it on screen, I didn't like who I was seeing. I just didn't. I know it was a thing where I was supposed to be a character, but I was going, dang, I'm actually angry at this person. I'm mad that he betrayed his friend like that. I'm mad that he shot an innocent kid, in the streets for basically trying to cover up some stuff that he did, and that's what my character was, the villain in the movie, and what I did in the movie, you'd have to go see it, but it was more sinister than that, but I just didn't like, like myself after that. So because these characters kind of stick with you a little bit after you do them. I remember after Newsies, it took me about 6 months to get rid of my New York accent. And every now and again, I'll probably slip into it unknowing. I mean, we had a dialect coach and everything, but that accent was hard to get rid of.
What did it make you, from that experience then on that movie, did you become like more selective? Like, not saying you weren't being selective before, but it make you feel like, so that you didn't feel like that again about a character that you were going to play?
Yeah, I think I did. Yeah. During that time, because, back in LA in the early mid 90s, that was gangster rap was everywhere. Tupac and the East Coast West Coast feud was going down. There wasn't a whole lot of positivity going on in hip hop back then, in the mid 90s and in the late 90s, so I didn't want to, I guess I felt like I didn't want to add to that, for lack of a better word. We already had enough of it. We pushed hardcore as hard as we can hardcore push it. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like looking at this stuff going, yeah, we know the movie isn't about gangsters. We know the movie isn't about, me doing something or whatever. It was about this photographer that wanted to take pictures of urban life and real life, but he got caught up into this gang, life that he couldn't get himself out of because he was too deep in it now. That's what the movie shot was about, but, no one's looking at the front of the box. You see me there with 2 guns, and you see Lloyd on the front, and, Lloyd's famous for his role in Boys in the Hood. Everybody knows that role, and then he's famous also for another role, right, in Poetic Justice. God bless him, man. He was, during that time, he was trying to, and he was a real blood. Like, he was from jungles. He was Lloyd Avery II. If people look him up, he was about as authentic a gang member from Los Angeles was. And he was trying to shed all of that, during that time. And it caught up to him, so unfortunately he met his demise. But these are guys that he was trying to change his life. And that movie was going to be the starting block for him to go in a whole different trajectory. It just didn't happen. The LA swallowed him up, so he had to do what he had to do to survive out here. And it's like that sometimes, but that's just it's an unfortunate story.
Yeah, that's super sad. That's super
sad.
Yeah. But you then, as you go forward, you do more, like, you do some voice acting. I mean, how do you find that in comparison to at real in-person acting?
It's all acting, right? Like, right. So you're using your voice to do the acting thing, and don't you do so it's like it's easier, but convenience wise, it's just more. I take it back. I don't think voiceover acting is easier than on-screen acting, because really it has to come from here when you're voice acting. If you are dressing up in a costume, you're getting makeup and hair done, you can kind of sink into the character and become that character. Whereas with voice acting, you're relying on, a sketch or, a piece of paper, and then you're trying to, within that whole situation, figure out emotions and, and convey that through, the words that you're giving on the page. And so it's harder in some ways, but then again, it's more convenient with regard to just, all I have to do is stand in front of this microphone, and give a performance, and so, I did a couple of voices on the Saints Row 2 video game for I think a couple of voices on Grand Theft Auto, a couple of voices on Saints Row, which is a video game for PS3, and PS2 and 3, PS3. And I did a bunch. I would do a bunch of radio ads for McDonald's and I also did Bebe's Kids. I think Bebe's Kids, the animated movie, was my first venture into voice acting, you know. And also Marcus Houston was in that movie too. So it's like I always get these, you know, I'm always working with kind of the same kind of people. So I did a couple of loose characters in that film. And you know, also I did some voiceover work for a Robert Townsend movie called Meteor Man, which in the early 90s was like the first on-screen Black superhero that you're gonna ever see. It's, you know, Meteor Man was one of those movies that was like, oh, now we get to see, but that's why the 90s is so prominent, you know. You get to see a lot of firsts, you know, with the 90s. And that was fun times too. And so in 2015, I started really getting into voiceover work, really hardcore. And I found that a lot of my friends were there as well, like OG Banks III, who does a ton of voiceover work. I think he plays Luke Cage, you know, in a couple of different animated features. He's also he's on one of the Stretch Armstrong shows on Netflix as well. He was there, you know. He'd been doing voiceover work long before Newsies. Me and him was in Newsies together, and so that's kind of my big brother in the industry too. So voiceover work, commercials, film, a lot of radio ads, a lot of voiceover announcery stuff. Yeah, that's the stuff that gets me going, especially now. You know, I did a film, I did a TV show for Klasky Shupo called Ace Bogard, and that was my first, you know, real character that I was given with regard to animation. And so Klasky Shupo is the studio that gave you Rugrats. Mm-hmm. So yeah, Rugrats is, everyone loves Rugrats, right?
Of course, definitely.
But that's the studio that gave you Rugrats. So they produce a couple of different pilot cartoons per year. And so I was hired to do a pilot called Ace Bogard. And Will Forte from Mad TV fame. And also he was in Will was also in the let's see. He was also in the Three Stooges movie. He played Curly. Yeah. In the Three Stooges film. He was also a voice on that show with me, and I got to play a ninja with an afro. So yeah, it was fun. Like that, yeah, that was something named Soda. We were all trapped on this island, and it was a great experience. So I learned a lot during that time in doing VO, you know. But VO is real good to me as of late. Yeah.
That's awesome. And you have a great voice, like for all of that. Like I could imagine. And that's cool to be like, you know, solidified in video games as well, because again, that's like completely international around the world as well. I mean, you'd be great to host your own podcast, just thinking about it, like with all of the people you know and talking about people that, you know, you've all sort of come up in Hollywood together and how you keep re-emerging. Just something for you to think about, perhaps.
Yeah, I might do it. Like I've been thinking about doing that, you know, having a show just to discuss. First of all, I wanted to do a couple of videos to discuss some of my character work, you know, and where the inspiration behind some of the characters, because a lot of people hit me up and go, "Where the heck did you come up with that?" You know, I go, "Okay, well, I'll give you the game, you know, a little bit after that." So yeah, I think talking about some people, you know, acting choices, the choices people make when they're formulating characters and stuff, you know, some of the more prominent characters from the 90s, those would be great things to have a podcast about. So yeah, I'm thinking about doing it.
That'd be awesome.
I'm old, I'm tired.
You don't
I'm house, and I'm doing, you know, work, you know, I'm using power tools and stuff like that, you know. So yeah, I'm down for all of that stuff.
Well, you don't look old or tired, so
oh, man. Woo, knock on wood. Yeah.
Well, so what about what's going forward? I mean, are you just you want to continue in all of these different, directions? You still want to do the voiceover, the acting, commercials, all of these things, or is there like one particular lane you want to go to?
Animation. Animation is my lane. Producing it and drawing it, and kind of being like, a young Seth MacFarlane, that kind of vibe. So I've been, during the pandemic, I draw, too. So I don't, a lot of people, that don't really know that I draw, but, I'm kind of the, when I was in my band, I did a lot of logo work, and I did a lot of artwork for them. And also when I was in Newsies, art has been a big part of who I am. Me and Luke Edwards came up with, we were already at 12 years old coming up with merchandising for Newsies and stuff, so I created a toy line for all the characters for Newsies. I created a Monopoly video game, not video game, a Monopoly game that we would play in the classroom for Newsies and stuff like that. I sent it to them, to get reviewed. They declined. But it was cool to have like my toy line actually declined by Disney, because it showed that they were nice enough to look at it, first of all. And it showed that I was, it kind of inspired me to go, okay, cool. I could actually do this later on in the game if I want, if I wanted to bring out plans of, because I'm a huge fan of G.I. Joe toys, the early the articulation G.I. Joe action figures. So I fashioned all of our Newsies main cast as to G.I. Joe toys, and gave them specific movements and things of that nature. So yeah, man, like I in my brain, I'm kind of entrepreneurial like that. I like cartoons. I love to draw. I produced a cartoon called Kickflip, about 3 Black skateboarders who their boards get struck by an alien lightning, and they transform into these surfboards. So they're superheroes and stuff. So I produced that. 360. I wrote the treatment for the pilot. I shot the pilot here. I produced the pilot here. I did a lot of the voices for them just for the pilot. So it was a 5-minute sizzle reel. And I did that just specifically because, one, I wanted to see if I could, you know what I'm saying? Which successfully I did. No one picked it up, but I got a chance to pitch it. And now I'm like on to my next couple of projects with regard to that. So yeah, there's been talk of, the Newsies origin story that I was working on, where Boots and Jack are in Brooklyn and things of that nature. So yeah, I'm working on that. And so there's some things that I am working on actively, but I kind of got to keep hush on it until, maybe somebody will, go ahead and take the idea. So I'm just, during the pandemic, I got my skill set up with regards to 3D animation, learning to use certain software like Maya and ZBrush, things of that nature. So yeah, I'm still working very actively in animation and what have you. I'm just waiting for the right time to, reveal, some work and then pitch it, because I like to stay kind of hush with regard to like projects. I hate like, telling people what you're doing, because then they're salivating for it. Right. And then when it doesn't come, they're like disappointed, so I, even though I've said all this stuff, it's just like a trinket. I'll give someone something, to know it's there. And then when it comes out, it's like, oh, that was the thing you were talking about, but that's kind of how I roll. Like even commercial work, I never post about it until it airs, or I'll never talk about a project that I'm filming until it airs. And then someone says, hey, I saw you on that Toyota commercial. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. I just filmed that thing. So let me find it and post it up. Hey guys, here's my Toyota commercial, or that I'm doing a voice for NASCAR through Fox and things of that nature. So yeah, voiceover, you'll never see me coming with regard to voices, but I think that's kind of the way voiceover should work.
All of that is so amazing, incredibly like multi-talented and creative. So cool, very cool. I mean, where can people find you, you know, on social media and those places to keep up to date? I mean, I'll put the links below, but, you know, yeah,
Oh
where
yeah.
can they get you?
Well, you can find me on Instagram. I'm at Lowman01, LOWEMAN 01. That's a terrible name, but I think I came up with that in high school, and I wrote it on my backpack. So it was gonna be useful at some point in time or another. And I'm on Facebook with you can just search me at Arvie Lowe Jr. ARVIE, last name Lowe, LOWEJR. So Facebook.com, Arvie Lowe Jr. I'm there. And then Lowman01 at Instagram. So I'm there in those two places. And if you want to just Google me randomly, just type my name into a search engine and random stuff will come up. Probably terrible random stuff. Yeah.
Well, it's been an absolute honor to talk with you. It's so interesting, amazing. I'm sure everybody is going to enjoy it. So I have all of the links below for your social media, and yeah, like just wish you can, you know, continued success of everything that you do, and can't wait to, you know, to enjoy the ride, you know, as watching.
I appreciate it.
You know what I mean?
No, it sounded perfect to me, Simon. It's great. Everyone will figure it out. They'll check out the links.
Cool.
Hey,
well,
thank you
you
for having me on, by the way. I really appreciate it. Like, this was fun. I got to probably do more of these.